Hello, my name is Eduardo Ox and I'm the author of a package for Emacs called EEV. And EEV is a package that lets you keep executable logs of things that you do, mainly of things that you're learning. And these executable logs are in a format that is quite readable, and it's easy to edit, and it's easy to play back the steps that you recorded. And you can play back these steps step by step. You can control we have very fine control of what you do, and also you can play the steps back in any order, and you can change the steps and play back variation of the previous steps and so on. Anyway, when you install EV in the standard way, in the recommended way, that is a way that is good for total beginners, it creates a script called tiled/ev that when you execute that script, it opens Emacs with EV turned on, and most important, it opens the main interactive tutorial of EV. So you get into Emacs and straight into the interactive tutorial where you can learn about EV and Emacs at the same time. This interactive tutorial looks like this. It has a header here on the top, and then it says this, and then section 1 is called installing EV. And then it has a section 2 called evaluating Lisp and so on. Anyway, let me go back. Note that this thing here in this gray line, this gray line is called the mode line, and here you have an indication of where we are. So find EEV quick intro is the main interactive tutorial. I'm going to close this and go back to the script that I prepared for the video that explains what are the three main keys of EV, which is also the title here. I had to prepare a script because anyway, sorry, I knew that I was going to be very nervous, and if I didn't write everything down, I would become very confused. So the first of the mini video tutorials is about how to install the EV in a certain way, in that way that launches Emacs and opens the interactive tutorial. But we are in the second of the mini tutorials and the intent of this second video, this second mini tutorial, is to help people to use this interactive tutorial, because I wrote it to, people would have to experiment with lots of things. They would have to discover how things work by themselves. It's quite terse. So not everyone understands all of the steps, and so this video tutorial is a kind of a guide to how to use this main tutorial. These things which names like find something intro are the interactive tutorials. EEV comes with several of them. This is the main one again. So these are interactive tutorials, and what I'm showing now is a video, is a mini video tutorial. And I used the same software, the same functions that I used to create these interactive tutorials, to create this text here that I'm using to explain things without getting too confused. So this second video tutorial is about the basic ideas that you need to understand to run the interactive tutorials, and these basic ideas are just three keys. Let me just start by explaining some terminology about keys. I mean, about how Emacs denotes keys. When we see uppercase C -E in the documentation of Emacs, this means Control E. Uppercase M-E means Alt E. And in fact, we pronounce uppercase M-E as Meta E, and this is because some old keyboards has a meta key, so this idea is inherited from the meta key that was used a lot in early versions of Emacs. but recent keyboards don't have a meta key, they have an out key instead, so out is the modern version. Out is the modern version of the meta key. If you want more information about the meta key, the Wikipedia has a very good page about it. You just have to go to Wikipedia and search for meta key. Another important idea that is not obvious to everyone that runs the interactive tutorial is that some keys in Emacs, they recognize numeric prefixes and they behave in a different way when you give to them a numeric prefix. For example, if I type meta 4, meta 2, A, I get this. Let me explain. When I type meta 2, meta 4, note that this is the indication that I have not completed yet the sequence of keys that I'm typing. So Emacs is waiting for something else. So now the numeric prefix is 42, and if I type A, what Emacs does is that it behaves as if I typed A 42 times. So in this case, prefix of 42 means repeat 42 times. So we got 42 copies of the letter A. But in some situations, the numeric prefix mean other things completely different from repetition. We're going to see that soon. The idea that is the most important of all is that Emacs is based on Lisp. Actually, Emacs is much more a Lisp environment than an editor. And Lisp is a programming language that uses lots of lists and lots of parentheses, because the parentheses are used to delimit the lists. And it uses a funny notation where in this there are no commas separating the elements of these lists. This funny notation, these expressions with lists expressed without commas, these lists without commas are called S expressions, and this is abbreviated SEXPs. And the Wikipedia has a very good page about SEXPs that explains a lot about Lisp and about the origin of all these things. So in Lisp, Lisp uses lots of lists where the elements are separated by white space instead of by commas. And also, in each of these lists, many of these lists are going to be interpreted as programs, and when they are interpreted in this way, then the first element of the list is the name of a function, and the arguments for the function follow the name of the function, which is a bit funny. So this is an example. This is a list where with 3 elements separated by white space. The first of these elements is a star, which means multiplication, and the arguments are 2 and 3. And this program here means multiply 2 and 3 and return the result. So when we execute this, the result is going to be 6. And it turns out that, well, not only Emacs is written in Lisp, but we can execute Lisp expressions from any point in Emacs. And also, because of the syntax with parentheses, Emacs is able to go from the end of the list to the beginning of the list and vice versa. And Emacs has a standard key sequence, which is Ctrl+X, Ctrl+E, that executes the Lisp expression before the cursor. So if I execute Ctrl+X, Ctrl+E here, the result appears here. What happens is that Emacs, the cursor is here. Just let me introduce some more terminology. In Emacs calls the cursor the point. So when the point is here, the S expression before point is this expression here, which means multiply 2 by 3, and the result is 6. So if the point is here and I type Ctrl X, Ctrl E, then Emacs executes this and displays the result here. Just let me introduce a bit more of terminology. This gray line here is called the mode line, and this thing here explains where we are. So in this case we are in the script that I prepared to make this video about the 3 main keys of EV. And this thing here, the last line of the screen, sometimes it is called the echo area when it's used for messages, and sometimes it is called the mini buffer when it is used for prompts. Let me give an example. If I want to open a certain file, one way to do that is by typing a sequence of keys, Ctrl X, Ctrl F, and then Emacs gives me a prompt here, and I can edit this, and I can complete a file name here, and if I type enter, then Emacs is going to open this file. Anyway, let me go back. I'm going to show how to open files soon. So this is a Lisp expression, this is also a Lisp expression, and this is a Lisp expression that contains other smaller Lisp expressions. And this one means, remember, I said before that the name of the function comes first, and then come the arguments of the function. So in this case, the function is plus, meaning add, and the arguments are this one and this one, which means that Emacs has to calculate this, and the result is a number, 6. Then it has to calculate this, and the result is 20. And then it is going to execute the function plus with arguments 6 and 20. So it's going to work as this. Sorry. It's going to work as this, and the result is going to be 26. Okay. So this is one of the main ideas that Emacs has a programming language behind it, and this programming language is called Lisp. It is technically very simple, but things are written in a way that is not the usual way in which we write mathematical expressions. So here I've just copied these expressions here with the comment here with the results, and also Emacs has Lisp expressions that have side effects, in the sense that what they return is not very important. I don't even remember what is the result of this, if it is a number of what. What's important is of this function here, the function insert, is that it takes this argument here and it inserts it. Well, Emacs is an editor, so there's a way to insert characters where the point is. I can either insert it by hand, or if I execute this, the effect is that Emacs is going to insert this string at the point. Before we go ahead, let me give you a spoiler. The 3 basic keys of EV are meta E, meta K, and meta J. Meta E means execute. In the Emacs terminology, this is evaluate. And this means execute the Emacs Lisp expression before the point. It's usually used to use Emacs Lisp expressions as hyperlinks. I'm going to show that soon. And meta K means to go back, is used to go back. For example, if I open a new file, then I can go back by closing this file. This is like following a hyperlink in a browser and then opening a new page, but the old page is still in the memory somehow. If you close a new page, you go back to the previous page. And meta-j is used to jump to certain predefined places. And this predefined, the way that meta-j determines which predefined place to use is by the numeric argument. So for example, meta2 runs this. So it opens one of the interactive tutorials, the tutorial about the main keys of Emacs. meta5 runs meta-j with numeric prefix 5, and it runs this, which opens the main interactive tutorial. And if you type just meta-j, it lists all these numbers and all the targets associated to them in a funny format, but whatever. Let me give you an example. If I type meta-j here, we get a header here that explains some things that I'm going to discuss later. Then here a big listing of numbers, sometimes with stars just after them, and targets in a funny syntax. Anyway, I was just giving a spoiler, and just to end the spoiler, the thing is that you just need to learn these three keys, meta-e, meta-k, and meta-j, which means execute, kill, and jump. And if you learn these three keys, you'll be able to navigate all the interactive tutorials. I call them the sandbox tutorials. You're going to be able to navigate the list of the most important keys, which is this one of the tutorials here. Sorry, this one here, remember. And the Emacs manuals. Let me show this just as a curiosity. This is a tutorial about the basic keys. It starts with listing the basic keys of EV, with some not so basic keys among them. But then it has several sections about the main keys of Emacs. Actually, it lists essentially all the keys that I've memorized after using Emacs for 25 years. My memory is not very good, and the thing that I like about Emacs is that I do not need to memorize many things. I can create notes, and I can consult these notes wherever I want, whenever I want. So, for example, this section here is about how Emacs interprets key sequences and what we can do when we are typing a key sequence and we decide that we do not want to finish that key sequence. We want to abort it. And note that this thing here is a Lisp expression, and this thing here opens a node in the Emacs manual, a node called keys, and it searches for the string key sequence in it. So it opens a page of it opens the Emacs manual in a subsection of it called keys, and it searches for this string in that page. So most lines in this interactive tutorial here have hyperlinks that go to the Emacs manual. The Emacs manual is incredibly detailed, and each of these pages have some paragraphs that are going to make sense at first reading, and some paragraphs that are very advanced material, but you have to take a look and to learn by yourself how to recognize what is basic and what is advanced. So in most of this tutorial, at the left I list what is the sequence of keys, and at the right I have a hyperlink. And note that this hyperlink goes to a page called quitting. This one is about key called meta-x. that runs commands by name, and so on. So these are the keys for doing cutting and pasting and so on. So this is an interactive tutorial that lists most of the more important keys and has lots of hyperlinks. Anyway, oh my god, I was just giving a spoiler and I ended up explaining too much. So if you learn just Meta E, Meta K, and Meta J, you can navigate the sandbox tutorials, the list of all most important keys of Emacs and AV. They are listed in one of the tutorials, and you are also going to learn how to navigate the Emacs manuals. And this tutorial here has lots of links to the Emacs manuals, and one of the sections of the main tutorial, which is this one, is exactly about how to navigate manuals inside Emacs, but whatever. As I mentioned, this mini tutorial is just to help people to run the interactive tutorial, and I've copied to this script here some sections of the main interactive tutorial, and we are going to see them in details and in a more didactical order and discuss them. So these are the sections that I've copied to here with some small changes. These are links to those sections in the main tutorial. So if I execute this expression here, I go to section 3 in the main tutorial, but whatever, let me explain more slowly what happens here. So this is a copy of section 2 in the main tutorial. It says, when you type Meta E, Emacs moves the point to the end of the current line, then runs a variant of Ctrl+X, Ctrl+E. If the point is here and I type Ctrl+X, Ctrl+E, then Emacs executes the expression, the sexp before point, which is this one. If the point is here and I execute Ctrl+X, Ctrl+E, and then Emacs executes the sexp before this position here, and the sexp is this one, whose result is 20, and if the point is here and I execute Ctrl+X, Ctrl+E, then Emacs executes this plus here that calculates the result of this expression, calculates the result of this expression, and adds both. It adds 6 and 20. And when I was learning Emacs, I learned a bit of Lisp very quickly. I already knew a bit of Lisp, and so for some reason I found Lisp relatively easy. And I figured out how to use standard Emacs functions by calling them from Lisp. I'm going to show this soon. And I started to use them as hyperlinks. Oh, sorry, this is the section 3, but whatever. And I realized that one thing that I was doing all the time was that I was going to the end of the line. And the easiest way to go to the end of the line when I started was by typing Ctrl+E. So if I type Ctrl+E here, the point moves to the end of the line here. And if I type Ctrl+E, Ctrl+X, Ctrl+E, then I go to the end of the line and then I execute the S expression before point. I noticed that I was doing that all the time, thousands of times a day. So I defined a key, Meta E, that would do the same thing. It would go to the end of the line, it would execute this expression before the end of the line. So in a sense, Meta E means execute the expression before the end of the line. Okay, so it's a kind of execute, but its point of reference is at the end of the line, and note that it always moves the pointer to the end of the line. And I mentioned numeric prefixes. Meta-E is one of the key that accepts several different numeric prefixes, and this prefixes changes its behavior. In this main tutorial, I only explain one of these numeric prefixes, which is meta0, meta-E. When I type meta0, meta-E, for example here, what happens is that the cursor still moves to the end of the line, but instead of executing an expression, it just highlights this expression for about 1 second. So if the point is here and I type meta0, meta-E, it highlights this. And if the point is somewhere in this line and I type meta0, meta-E, it highlights this expression here that has 3 lines. And by the way, the expression before point when the point is here is this expression here. If I type meta0, meta-E here, it highlights this expression. So, Emacs is a text editor written in Lisp. So, and one of the things that we do a lot in an editor is to insert text. If the point is here, I can insert hello like this. But Emacs also has functions for inserting text. Actually, when I type uppercase H, what happens is that Emacs calls the function that inserts a character here. And if I execute this expression here, it inserts a hello at the point where the cursor is. So if I execute it here, I get a hello here. And if I type meta-E here, something apparently weird happens. The cursor goes to the end of the line, and then the expression is executed, and we get a hello at the position at the end of the line, like this. And remember that I just showed what happens when the point is here and I execute the expression before the point. In this case, the expression before point is this one, and if I execute it, the result is 26. If the point is here and I execute the expression before the point, the result is irrelevant. I think it's nil. And the effect is that the hello is inserted here. And in this video, in the second half of this video, I'm also going to use 2 other prefixes for meta-E that I do not explain in the main tutorial, main interactive tutorial. They are meta2, meta-E, and meta3, meta-E. And what they do is that they create 2 window settings like this. But in this window at the right, they're going to show the target of the sexp that we executed. But this idea of the target of a sexp will only make sense in the next section, because in the next section I'm going to explain more clearly how a sexp, sorry, I did explain a bit before, but whatever. I'm going to explain more clearly when a sexp behaves as a hyperlink. So, section 3 of the main tutorial is called Lisp hyperlinks. It says each one of the sexps below, which means the sexps in this block of example here, each one of the sexps below makes Emacs go somewhere if you execute it. Let me give an example. If I execute this expression here, it opens a file. Its effect is exactly the same as if I type the sequence of keys that we use to open files, which is Ctrl+X, Ctrl+F. If I type Ctrl+X, Ctrl+F, then Emacs shows a prompt here. It lets me edit the name of the file that I want to open. And if I type return here, it opens this file. And this file is one of the source files of EV. Here is its name. And here Emacs is saying that it is in Emacs Lisp mode. it has recognized that this file is in Emacs Lisp, and it is colorizing it in a certain way. It recognizes that everything after semicolon is a comment. It's highlighting some special words in these comments. This thing is not a comment. This is a definition of a function called a flash. So this is a special function that defines functions. This is the name of the function that I'm defining, and so on. Blah, 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 whatever. And if I close this file that I've opened, Emacs is going to return to the previous thing that it was editing, which was my script for this video. So this thing here works as a hyperlink that opens a certain file. And if I close this file, I go back to the position where I was. So meta E here means execute this expression, and execute this expression works as following a hyperlink. Note that the tutorial says executing sexps like those ones below here. We are going to call sexp like this. A Lisp hyperlinks is like following a hyperlink in a browser. In what sense? In the sense that in a browser you can go back after following a hyperlink because the previous page is kept in memory somehow. In Emacs with EV, the easiest way to go back if you open a file or if you did something similar is by using meta k, which runs a function called kill this buffer, which is a variant of a standard function in Emacs that is called kill buffer. So meta k, this k here is a mnemonic for kill buffer, and the way to go back is by killing a certain buffer. So killing a buffer is a variation of closing a file. I'm not going to explain the difference now, but whatever. And the text continues by saying, if you follow one of the links below with meta E, it creates a new buffer and displays it. And the buffer, most of these buffers, the first things here are going to open files. And if you then type meta k, then this new buffer is killed, and Emacs displays the buffer that was just below it. So it goes back to this tutorial, the tutorial about the three main keys. And it says, try it. This interactive tutorial that I'm explaining, the one that has this section 3 here, is full of things that say try it. And the idea is that you should try things there. You're not going to destroy anything if you try. And you have to try by yourself to understand what these things do. You have to do some experiments and so on. So what happens if we try these expressions here? If we try this one, if you try executing it, it opens a certain file, and if we close this by using meta k, we go back. Now we can try this one that does the same thing as before. We can close this file with meta k, and this one does something different. Instead of opening a file, it opens the listing of a directory. Note that this file here, this is the full path name of this file. The file name is this, but it is in this directory. Here we are just opening this directory and listing everything that is in it. If we open it, we are going to get a list of the name of the directory here, and then a listing of all these things. And note that one of the files in it is exactly evflash.el. If we open it, we get the same effect as before. Okay, here's a definition of eflash again. So let me kill this and go back. And let me kill this also and go back. Here we have an idea that is a bit surprising. We are not opening a file. We are opening something else. We are opening the listing of the contents of a directory. We've opened it, and we can go back by typing meta k. But this thing here is not a file. First of all, usually when we are opening a file, when we are editing a file, when we type enter, this enter is going to be interpreted as insert a new line here. So Emacs is in a kind of editing mode. If I'm in a directory listing like this, and I open this file, I open it by typing enter here. So the enter is interpreted in a totally different way. Here, enter means open the file at the current line. And here is the hint that says that keys are going to be interpreted in a completely different way here. Instead, the mode here is called direct, which is an editor of directories. And just let me go to the notes that I wrote here for this section. Note that here the mode is fundamental. Note that here the mode is Emacs Lisp. And this section of the manual about major modes explain this idea. Every buffer possesses a major mode which determines the editing behavior of Emacs while that buffer is current. The mode line normally shows the name of the current major mode. In this case, the major mode is info. In parentheses, here we have a page that explains how to interpret the mode line that has a lot of information here. And here there are some explanations about what is the fundamental mode, and so on and so on. And here in the third paragraph we have an explanation of what is direct mode. It says most major modes fall into three major groups. The first group contains modes for normal text, blah 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 blah. The second group contains modes for specific programming languages. And the third group consists of major modes that are not directly associated with files. This is a key idea. Remember that I was saying buffers at some point and files at some other points. And I was talking about opening a file and closing it. Actually, a buffer is something a bit more general than a file. When we open a file, it is opened in a buffer, but some of the buffers are not associated with any files. Anyway, let's try to read this. The third group consists of major modes that are not associated directly with files. These modes are used in buffers created for specific purposes by Emacs, such as direct mode for buffers made by direct, message mode, blah 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 blah. So this expression here, it opens a directory listing that is not associated to a file, so some operations that are typical for files will not work here. If I try to save this file, it's going to behave in a weird way. And remember that return works in a weird way here. It simply opens a file, the file at the current line. This hyperlink also opens a directory, but it opens the temporary directory /tmp. So this is a listing of what I have in the directory now. This one here is even weirder. Emacs is made to be explored by users. It's very easy to access the source code of any functions in Emacs. So, for example, remember, if I type Ctrl X, Ctrl F, Emacs runs a function called find file. The standard way to get documentation about this function is by typing Ctrl H, F. You do not need to memorize this, okay? So when I say the name of a key sequence very quickly, it means you do not need to memorize this. Don't even try. So if I type Ctrl H, F, this gives me some help about the function. As the point is in this position over the name of this function, then the default name of a function is exactly find file, this find file here. If I type enter here, I get a description, the description of the function find file with a lot of information. It says that find file is a compiled Lisp function, whatever that means. In this file here, this thing is in blue because it's a hyperlink, not a hyperlink in Emacs Lisp, a hyperlink in the usual sense, in the sense that we can click on it or we can type enter on it, and when we do that we follow it and we open this file here. And actually it opens, not only opens this file, but it opens this file in the definition of this function in this file. So take a look. I'm going to type enter here. I could also click here with the mouse. And if I type enter here, it opens this file here, files.emacslisp, and it goes to the definition of find file. But let me close this to go back. In this line it says what are the key sequences that can be used to access this function. Most beginners are going to use one of the either the toolbar, which is this one, or the menu bar, that is this one, to do basic things like running find file. So in this menu here, in the menu bar, you can you have an option called visit new file here, and if you execute this, the effect is the same as running Ctrl H, Ctrl X, Ctrl F. Anyway, let me deactivate these things here that are going to be distracting for us. So let me cancel the toolbar, the toolbar and the menu bar. And here's a lot of information about this function here that is defined in Lisp. This information here is for humans. This information here is more for programmers, and so on. So it's a lot of information in just a single page. Anyway, we can get a description of find file by memorizing that we can use the help sequence, the certain key sequence for help, Ctrl H, F, and then we type find file. But I decided that I didn't want to memorize that. Every time that I needed to remember that, I would spend 5 or 10 seconds. And also I'm a very bad typist. I commit mistakes all the time, so it was better to just create a hyperlink to this description. So this is a hyperlink that does the same thing as running describe function on find file. So if we execute this hyperlink here, we get the same thing as before. So this thing is a hyperlink to a file. This is also a hyperlink to a file. This is a hyperlink to directory. This is also a hyperlink to directory. This is a hyperlink to a description of a function. And these are the things that are hyperlinks to other things. In Unix, the documentation of the basic commands is usually by in an old format called a man page. This thing here opens the man page for the command date that you can access from the shell. If we open the man page of date, again, it's a very dense format, it's very technical, with some things that are not for beginners, like the syntax here. And here we have a description that mixes things that look like English with things that are very, very technical. This also opens a man page. This thing calls the shell, which is like a terminal, and executes some commands in the shell, and then it displays the output of these commands. Let me show the result of this because it's interesting. This hyperlink here is going to execute this series of 3 commands. First, it's going to execute date, which shows the current date and time. Then it's going to sleep for 1 second, it means it pauses for 1 second, and then it runs date a second time. And when it runs date a second time, it's going to show a date and time that is 1 second after the first one. So if I execute this, it takes a while because it has a pause of 1 second in the middle. And the output is this. Okay, the first date was run at this time, the second date was run at this time. This thing here opens a page of the Emacs manual. This thing here also opens a page of the Emacs manual. And this thing here goes to the source code for find file. So sorry for the long explanation. I think I took about 10 minutes only explaining what each one of these hyperlinks do, but my intention was exactly to explain what they do, because some people try to run them just by using Ctrl X to execute and Ctrl K to go back, and they don't understand what some of these hyperlinks do. And some people even I don't know, they were so confused that they couldn't think anymore. So this thing goes to the source code for find file, which is this one. Remember that we can go there by looking at the description and then clicking here. And also, not all Lisp hyperlinks go somewhere. Some are more like buttons in a browser, buttons in a web page, buttons that perform an action. So here is an example, and in this example here, this expression, the effect of this expression is as if the user had typed this series of keys. So what happens when the point is here and the user types down, then Ctrl A, which is a command that goes to the beginning of the line, then it types uppercase H, uppercase E, uppercase L, uppercase L, uppercase O, exclamation point, then up, then Ctrl E. So executing this sequence of keys would insert a hello here. And what happens when we execute this is a series of times? Let's try. By executing at a certain time you get this, second time you get another hello, you get another hello. And what happens if we change one of these? What happens if we execute it again? We see that the other hello is inserted at the beginning. So this is just to say that hyperlinks, Lisp hyperlinks can do many things, not all of them similar to things that can be done in the browser. And also some important hyperlinks, they don't open a new page, they just display their output in the echo area here. So if I execute this, it just displays the current date and time in the echo area. Just let me check if I've explained everything that are in these notes. Find fline is a contraction of find file line. I've explained the idea of refining hyperlinks. That is here. That is, this link goes to a full page, this link goes to a section, this link goes to a word in that section. And note that all these hyperlinks here, they start by find. It turns out that Emacs have has a function called man, but it behaves in a weird way. If we execute this, it is going to it opens a man page in another window. So the way to close this to go back is totally different. It's not just a matter of typing meta k here. We also have to close this window. So it's hard to go back after doing this. So it will be hard to do experiments, because the person doing the experiment would be lost and wouldn't know how to go back in some situation. So in this section of one of the more advanced tutorials, I explain how I define the hyperlinks with find to be well behaved, in the sense that we can follow them and go back. Follow them with meta e and going back with meta k. And it also has some examples of Emacs functions that can be used as hyperlinks, but they are messy. And there's also a second example here, that the function that works describe function works as a hyperlink, but it displays a lot of output here. So this is visually a bit confusing. Anyway, also I wanted to explain a bit about measure modes. I did that. Anyway, so we saw sections 2 and 3 about the tutorial of the interactive tutorial, and the other important thing is much ahead. It's in section 7.1 of the main tutorial. It's something called the e-jump that corresponds to meta j. So this sequence, this section starts by explaining the idea of prefix arguments. It has a comment here that meta 9a inserts 9 copies of the letter A, but meta 9 meta A does something different. It goes back, I think that it goes back 9 sentences, I think, I don't remember. This is a link to a page in the Emacs manual that explains in details what these numeric arguments are. And these are the main examples of what meta j do. This is the one that is the most important of all. Meta 5 meta j goes to the main tutorial here, the one that starts by explaining how to install IV, and then it has the section 2 that we examined, and then section 3, then lots of sections that I'm not explaining now. Anyway, and then many sections, and then section 7.1, which is this one. I mean, this one that I've copied here. So meta 2 meta j is very important. It goes to the list of Emacs keys. And note that if we type meta 2 meta j, here we have a header of this tutorial, and we have a line that explains how to go back to this page very quickly, because this line says that the quickest way to open again this tutorial about Emacs keys is by typing meta 2 meta j. there's also a reference about meta 6, meta j that points to a tutorial that I've not been using very much lately. And there's a mention to meta 1, meta j. And meta 1, meta j opens a file where usually we keep all nodes in this file. The objective of AV is to take executable nodes of the things that you do. And in the beginning, the idea is that we are going to store all these executable nodes in a single file. That is traditionally the file to do. So if we type meta 1, meta j, you go to that file, but I'm not explaining how to take these nodes. Sorry, there's so much to talk about this that I have to postpone talking about this to the end of this video tutorial. And also, if you type meta j without a prefix argument, it runs a function called find AU jumps. Remember that this means that this is a hyperlink that you can go there and you can go back by typing meta k. So if we just type meta j, we get this page here. We can go back by typing meta k. And the page generated by this, or by simply meta j, it displays a help text following by all the current jump targets as function definitions, one in each line. So this is the header. These are the current definitions of what these numbers do. So for example, if the numeric prefix is 10, so if I run meta j with the prefix 10, then Emacs is going to run this. So the syntax is a bit weird. And note that here, in the section 7.2, I have two expressions. The first one means behave as if the user had typed meta j. So if I execute this, I get this list of jump targets. And if I run this expression, the same. So here is a short comment about the syntax, and then I copy the help text to the tutorial, and I say that if you forget everything, if your mind goes blank, and if you forget everything except from meta j and meta e, then you can just type meta j, and this help text is going to let you do everything else. If you just remember that meta e executes the last s expression in this line, then you know that this thing here is a hyperlink to a certain section in the main interactive tutorial. Remember, this is the main interactive tutorial. This is the name of a section in it. So if I execute this, I open section 7.1 in the main interactive tutorial. Note its name here. If I execute this expression here, I get the page about the main keys in Emacs, in the section about the main keys of AV. And this thing here can be used both as hyperlinks to these two tutorials and as a way to remember how to go there. So if we type meta 2, meta j, the effect is the same as running this, and if you type meta 5, meta j, the effect is the same as running this. And then, once we know this, we can try to decipher this syntax here. So this line here says that meta 2, meta j means meta 2, meta j executes this. So the idea is that if you forget everything, just type meta-j. Sorry, you can't forget everything. You need to remember meta-j and meta-e. But if you remember meta-j and meta-e, then you can follow these hyperlinks and navigate through all this documentation. Okay, I've explained the three main keys of AV, which are meta-A, meta-E, meta-K, and meta-J. So I hope that you have encouraged you to run the interactive tutorial. I hope that you will be able to run the interactive tutorial without being too confused. And that's it. Bye.